Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome back. Welcome back to another PorscheCooled Podcast, the podcast where we chat about all things Porsche. Today is the PorscheCooled Owner Stories episode. So we're up to number 10. This is the episode that goes live on a Tuesday. Well, the Tuesday my time, and currently I'm in the UK. Usually I'm in Bahrain, but it always goes up on a Tuesday at the moment. It goes up about 1 p.m. GMT time. If you're wondering what time I actually put it up, that's when it goes up. So this is Owner Stories. Like I said, this is number 10. And today we have Gregg joining us shortly by Zoom. So I'll connect up with Gregg by Zoom. Gregg is in the New York area. I think he's in New Jersey. I have to double check with him. I'm not 100% sure. Gregg and I have spoken briefly through Instagram. We haven't spoken a lot, but we have spoken on and off. And Gregg is on Instagram. He's FirstFlatSix on Instagram. But I want to ask him more about that because it looks like he has a lot to do with Porsches, especially 996s and 997s. So we'll get into that in our chat shortly. But welcome back to the PorscheCooled Podcast. Once again, thank you for all the support. Thank you for all the Patreons, all the PorscheCooled Exclusive members who've joined up. Like I said, if you want to support the podcast, it really does help us keep moving along. It'll help us buy the extra equipment that we need to buy as well. But that's on Patreon. You just go to Patreon /PorscheCooled or just search PorscheCooled on Patreon and you will find it. It's pretty easy to join. It's pretty easy to set up. But thanks for all the members so far. We have 13 PorscheCooled Exclusive members now, so that's great. And that's about it. So let me get Zoom working and let me get Gregg on the other line. Hopefully the audio is playing nicely with us today. It was okay when I had it with Barry's episode, but I think there might have been a few issues. But I apologize for any issues. And I know you guys are pretty good on me. This is done by Zoom, so there are some slight technical difficulties. Okay. Let's get into it, and let me just get Gregg, and let's just start talking Porsche. This is the PorscheCooled Owner Stories, number 10. Okay, so welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the PorscheCooled Podcast. Like I said, Owner Stories today, and we're up to number 10. And today we're going to have an interesting one, actually, because we've got Gregg with us, and Gregg's from New Jersey. Hi, Gregg. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. How are we doing?
Very well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Getting ready for this holiday tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I just realized, actually, I'm sorry, because just so the listeners know, Gregg and I were supposed to do this last Friday, and I had to cancel the last minute, so I really apologize for that. And then I realized it's Thanksgiving, right? So I didn't even think about it, and I thought about that this morning, and I'm glad you could still make it. So thanks for rearranging the time.
No, it's fine. It's a muted holiday this year because of the circumstances, but we're doing all right.
Yeah, well, I'm in London, so we're still in. I'm still in lockdown, so we're in lockdown for another, I don't know, week. Next week, I think it's the 2nd of December. I think they're going to relax it. So
I see.
But that's what's happening at the moment. So, all right. So PorscheCooled Owner Stories. Let's just tell the listeners, just to remind them what it's all about. I mean, for me, every Porsche tells a different story, and each owner has a story to tell, and that's why I wanted to do these owner stories, and that's what they're all about. And it gives me a conversation with other Porsche owners. It's a different conversation to I have with Steve on Fridays, and it helps me learn more about the brand, things that I don't know, and it helps me to connect with other people around the world. And I think it's a really good thing to do. So that's kind of why we do these owner stories. Because someone asked me that the other day. They said, how did you start all this up? So that's how it all started. But Gregg, let's tell the listeners first before we get into it. Let's just tell them, where are you from? So because you're from New York area, right? So you're in New Jersey.
Correct. Yeah, so I've been born and raised in New Jersey. I'm about an hour outside of New York City, so pretty much between Philadelphia and New York City. Okay,
perfect. And just so all the listeners know, Gregg has a Instagram, which I'll put the link in this podcast, but I'll just give you the Instagram address now so people can review this while we're chatting. It's FirstFlatSix written, and it's on Instagram. So just check that out while we're talking, and you can see some of the cars that Gregg has posted on his Instagram, and we can talk about that because it's like a curated Instagram. Gregg was just explaining to me, and I wanted to talk about that shortly. But the question I always start with, Gregg, and you probably know from listening to previous owner stories, is before we even talk about the car you own now, what are your first memories of Porsche or 911? Was it something, I mean, some people only get into it later in life when they're an adult. Some people are dreaming about it when they're a child. For you, did it start earlier on, or has it only been a recent thing?
So generally speaking, I've been a car kid slash guy my whole life. My mother, I was always into cars, and my mother at a very early age, I don't know exactly, but I had a subscription to Car and Driver from as far back as I can remember, up until I moved out for college. It's a shame I threw them all out. I had every issue for, probably like 10 years from the late 80s through the late 90s.
Yeah, you should have kept those.
Yeah, I wish I did. I wish I did. But, at the time, it's just junk. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
But anyway, I've always been a car guy. And, the Porsche 911's up there with those other halo cars of my era. So I'm an 80s baby. And, the Countach, the Testarossa, 348, 355, cars in that, those cars you aspire to, any car guy, hopefully be able to drive, or even, if you're blessed, hope to own one day.
Yep.
So the Porsche was on that list. I had toys, in the room that I grew up in my folks' house. I still have a 964, a red coupe, in my room, little model. Okay. So it's been the cars in general have been a passion of mine since early childhood.
So when did you, let's jump forward a few years. So when did you first, the 911 you have now, that's your first 911?
So the 911 I have now is not my first 911. It's my second 911. Okay. So go ahead.
So what was your first 911?
Okay. So my first 911 was a 1999 Porsche 996 Carrera 6-speed. I had been I bought the car in January of 2018. I had been looking pretty much for a year before that. So in the 2017s, right. Small kids, house, you know how it is. My financial position changed a little bit and I could afford to buy one. So I said, hell, let's do it. I always like in your podcast, you describe with Steve, how you kind of can't be super picky when you're looking for these things because they're 20 years old. They were optioned very specifically. And if you find something local that you like, you should probably take the plunge and just do it. That's sound, solid advice.
So your first car, the first one, the 1998, the one you found, was that local to where you were living? You found it quite close by?
Yes, so it was. So it was 1990. It was a 99. It was about 20 minutes away. I saw the listing go up, and it was priced incredibly. And I can say now, it was a couple of years. I paid $15,000 for this car.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, it was the 99 ocean blue graphite, 68,000 miles. Called the gentleman up. He was a service advisor at a dealership. I think it was an Acura or Honda dealership. I don't know. So right away, I was positive about that. He said that the IMS had been changed. He had a receipt for it, which totally just, the deal was over already for me at that point. I was going to buy the car. Didn't even need to see it. Went and I had already made the arrangements for the financing, the check. I went to go see him. I looked over the car. I popped the hood to look at the stickers. I saw that the car was actually optioned with the super rare limited slip differential that was only available in 1999. Okay. And in the 2004 40th anniversary editions. Yeah, obviously I didn't want to let him know that. I gladly handed over the check. He gave me the car and the deal was done.
So you didn't, I'll go on to my little thing that I always bring up. You didn't get an inspection for the car. You trusted the seller. You went there, you met the seller, you trusted the seller, and the car had a reasonable service history, and the IMS being the major issue that would be the major problem in the 996. That was enough to sell you on it. No pre-purchase inspection.
I did not have a pre-purchase inspection. What I like to tell people when they ask for pre-purchase inspections is, these cars are now, people are looking and searching for these cars. So when you find one and it is priced what we'll call, quote unquote, below market, you have to act quickly.
Yes.
It's a 20-year-old car. Even the nicest vehicles will require some sort of, there's always something wrong with them. It could be something minor, a visor's broken, lights are out, tail light, needs pads or rotors or something. In the back of my mind, you're always going to figure you're going to spend about $2,000 US to, make the car right at a minimum when you buy the car. So if it's priced right, as long as, the Carfax was clean, so I trusted that there wasn't any body damage. I looked it over. Yep. If the car is priced right, you have to act quickly. And I would suggest that if you are a car guy, you have to, sometimes you got to go with your gut and just do what you got to do. So to me, the risk was already priced into what I paid for the car.
Yeah, I agree. I think when it's at a certain price level, you have to, and I'm a big fan of PPIs, but I mean, that's when you're paying, a lot of money. I think when
Huge.
you're paying, when you're paying, well, let's just say smaller amounts, it's still money, but it's smaller amounts of money. And it has had, you think about the major problem with whatever generation of 911. Every 911 has some kind of issue, whether it be a 964 or an SC or a 996, you know what I mean? There's always something that you have to ensure has been done or fixed or etc. So the fact that the IMS was done, did they do the clutch at the same time on that car when they did the IMS, or was it just the IMS?
Correct. Yeah. They did a big service. They did the clutch, they did the IMS, they did the RMS. It was all in the, it was an invoice from the shop, and it was a local shop too. I knew the shop. So,
and I think
I was very confident in the car, but I will caveat that in saying, any private party, I would definitely, even though I just told you I didn't do one, but private parties that you cannot see the car, definitely do a pre-purchase. If you can't get hands on the car, always pre-purchase inspection.
I was just going to say that the fact that it was local, it was a local shop that you were familiar with, it had the IMS done, and the price was at a point where, if you didn't get it quickly, then someone else was going to take it from you.
Correct.
You know what I mean? So that's a deciding factor, isn't it? So it's kind of, you're still being sensible. It's not sort of just going in there and just buying it, without any type of research.
Correct. Don't ever buy a 911 blindly. I always tell folks that if you're buying what I'll call a quote unquote collector grade vehicle, a lot of money, you're paying super top retail, I would definitely get a PPI for that. I'd get a PPI if you can't put hands on the car. And generally speaking, private sellers, I would get a PPI, because dealers, while they have a reputation to protect, so while some of them could and are unscrupulous, we'll say, you should still do your due diligence.
What about a car? Here's an example for you. I'm just going to go off the track a little bit. What about a car, say a classic car, the 912, one of my favorites, right? So say I found one on Classic Trader here in the UK yesterday, and it's £59,000, right? It's top dollar, and it's nut and bolt restoration. It's in Wales, and it's 59,000. Now, in my head, I thought, as a full restoration car, there's probably no point doing a PPI on it. This is what I was thinking in my head. Even though I'm a big fan of PPIs, I'm thinking it's probably not necessary. But then I guess classic cars are a different thing, because classic cars, you have to ensure that the right parts were used if you wanted, the right parts from the right suppliers, etc. But it kind of comes back to trusting the seller. Like, this guy's been a member of the Porsche Club in UK for 45 years or something. So, that's in the listing. The thing is, how much do you trust the listing and how much do you trust the seller? Or would you still get a PPI on something like that that's just been fully restored and looks like it hasn't been driven since it's been restored?
So I'll caveat, I'm not that intimately familiar with the 912 market, but I would say it's a classic car. A lot of the value in those is in the restoration and, as you mentioned, the parts used. You say this gentleman was in the business for 45 years, or in the Porsche Club for 45 years. If he's well known and does have a reputation for producing good product, to me, 60,000 Aussie is what, like 40,000?
No, 60,000 pounds.
60,000 pounds.
So 100. So that's about, US. I'm not sure what the conversion is at the moment.
It's like over $80,000, I think.
Yeah, it's top dollar.
I'm spending $80,000, Michael. I'm doing a PPI.
Yeah, true. Okay, so
especially if the car's been around for a while and someone's not going to scoop in overnight and rip it and pull the plug from you.
Yeah, it is a lot of cash.
Yeah.
All right, so so that's the first 911, and you owned that car for how long, Gregg?
So I owned that car for 11 months.
11 months.
11 months. I loved the car, but it wasn't the color I wanted. I originally wanted a C4S. It just, like you mentioned all the time in all your podcasts, it wasn't exactly what I wanted. I knew I loved the car. So I was like, okay, I knew I bought it right. I knew I could get my money back and then some. So time to move on to the next one.
So it gave you the taste for 911.
Gave me the taste.
That was the taste.
Correct.
And you realized that, okay, I like this car, but I want something more from it.
Correct.
So when you had, during the 11 months of ownership, did you actually do anything to the 911?
Oil fluid changes. That's it. When I bought it,
so just
oil,
services.
brake. Yeah, just fluid changes and filters. That's it. No mods. No nothing.
And when you sold the car, and I don't want you to divulge the price, when you sold the car, did the value go up in 11 months?
It went up substantially.
It did. Yeah, because the 996 market, I want to talk to you about that later. The 996 market seems to be turning very quickly. And I was looking at Australian prices today, and we'll talk about it a bit later after we talk about your cars. But especially the Carrera 4S and the 996, I don't know what's happening to the prices of those and whether or not that's a worldwide thing. But in Australia, they seem to be going up very, very quickly. Very, very quickly.
I don't want to jump around, but you're in the United States, the 4S, I think, has got the wackiest pricing right now of all of the 996 variants.
Yeah, I saw one advertised at a shop in Australia in Sydney, which sells a lot of classic and specialty cars. And it was basically 100,000 Australian dollars. So what's that, 70,000 US?
Correct. Yeah, it's 70. That's insane.
And it was more expensive than a 997.1 Carrera S with low kilometers in manual.
Not only that, but they're approaching here in the States. They're approaching overlap with turbo pricing, which to me,
really?
The turbo is. I would go. The turbo is the 4S with the Metzger motor. It's like that's a no-brainer. And
yeah, if you had the choice between the two, I know which one I'd take.
And me too, but people are buying them. I don't know. I can't explain it.
Well, the turbo. Let's just talk about the turbo quickly. The turbo pricing in comparison in Australia. A good one is about 150,000 Australian dollars. So it's about 30% less in US, 130,000 Australian dollars. And good ones are probably better than that, lower kilometers, and people are trying to get a bit more around 165. So it's a bit of a variance there, depending on which one. Turbos,
I'm seeing here in the US, you can get into the finest 996 turbo. I'm talking less than 10,000 miles, full service history, cool color spec. For less than 80,000 US, more likely. And those cars sit too. So probably in the 70 to 75. So 96, about 100,000 Aussie.
100,000 Aussie. So it's cheaper than Australia. Yeah. So in Australia, the Carrera, like I said, the Carrera 4S is high. It's about, the good ones are sitting at, 100, close to 100. But then the turbos are probably 40% more, 30 to 40% more. Yeah. Unless it's a really high, I'm talking manual turbos here. I'm not talking Tiptronics. I'm talking basically manuals.
Correct. Anytime I'm talking higher. Pricing, it's always manual.
Yeah. But Steve and I were talking today, we always talk about the prices that things are advertised on. And I look at things in Australia and I look at things in the UK for sale. I don't look at that much in the US because I kind of look at bring a trailer and I look at their prices, but I know their prices are a little bit all over the place sometimes. But the thing is, what are people actually selling these cars for? And that's what Steve's point was when we recorded a podcast earlier today. So you can advertise, but what are you actually selling it at? What is the discount they're getting?
So, you could check auction sites because you could see what closed sales go for, but you have to remember they add in fees and everything like that. But I have the luxury in that, I have a pretty decent 996 following on various social media portals, and folks will reach out to me and tell me how much they paid for a particular car, and I will just tell everyone, if you see a car that's posted for sale for what you think is a ridiculous price, let's say a $70,000 C4S, like you said, the guy can ask whatever he wants for the car, but I've seen cars that I've seen listed for sale and I'm like, that's a great car, but the guy's like on a different planet with his pricing, and then someone will reach out to me a couple of weeks later and say, hey, I bought this car. And I'm like, oh man, I remember that car. I wanted ridiculous money for it. He's like, he took 40% less.
Really?
Yeah. So these, where it's like, oh man, I wish I'd known if I could have bought that car for 40,000 US, I'd have bought it for 4, but I wouldn't even, if the guy's asking 60, I'm not going to go off from 40 because I'm thinking he's not going to take it. So I tell people the worst they can say is no. The worst they can say is no. So if you're interested in the car, make an offer. If they say no, that's it. Then you move on. No big deal.
Yeah. I always think, maybe 20% is like pushing it. You know what I mean? 20% off the price they're asking. I always feel bad asking for really low. I know people do it, and I know people have done it that I've spoken to recently and said, yeah, the person took the offer. You know what I mean? Like, so it obviously happens.
When I do say that, I mean, if the car, let's say any car, let's say if it's worth 70, and when I say it's worth, it's like the general consensus is that's what it should go for. If it's worth 70 and a seller is asking 90, then make the $70,000 offer because that's what it's worth. I'm not advocating making an offer for 50,000 on a car that is worth 70,000. That's a big waste of time for everyone, and just don't do that. But people that haven't priced it correctly because they don't know the market, or they just think, oh, it's a Porsche, it's old, it's worth a lot of money, I'll price it accordingly. Feel free to make the phone call. It's a phone call. The worst they can say is no.
So let's just mention that to the listeners now, because they're probably getting confused and thinking you're a car dealer or something like that because of the knowledge you have and the way you're talking. So let's just jump forward, because it's probably better to give that background, and then we'll talk about the second car, the car you have now. So just tell the listeners, Gregg, about your Instagram and what you've set up and what you're doing and how it helps people.
Okay, so I guess the easiest way to do it, since everyone's familiar with it. All right, so everyone knows about Bring a Trailer, auction site in the United States. Super big. They get super top dollar. They have really great, quirky, wacky cars.
Yep.
Before they started doing auctions, the gentleman that ran that site was essentially just posting up cool cars that he found on Craigslist that you actually needed a trailer to go get. They'd be in a barn. They'd be in the back of somebody's backyard. They'd be in a pond. So it'd be a cool, quirky spec car that was on Craigslist, and he would post it and people would see it and go buy it. So it was like a curated listing site.
Right.
Bring a Trailer. So I loved that site when it was about that. Then they moved into auctions, and they've turned into an auction house. Now they don't do that anymore. So when they turned into auctions, I was commenting a lot on the 996s, and it got to a point where a lot of sellers and BAT regulars would, tag me to, hey, what do you think about this car? What do you think about that car?
Okay.
And I would refrain from trying to bash a car at that point. But then I got to thinking, I was like, you know what? People are valuing my opinion. So let me just start my own website, and with the cars that I find, I'll post them on them like they used to. And it started with me finding cars for myself that I wasn't going to fly to across the country to go buy a car sight unseen or anything like that. So if I saw something that was cool, quirky, and cheap, I would throw it on my site, and someone else could enjoy the fruit of my labor, per se.
Okay.
So think of it as a site of curated listings that I find on and off market.
Yeah, and I suggest the listeners go to it's FirstFlatSix.com, Gregg.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So the FirstFlatSix on the Instagram.
Spelled out.
Spelled out. Yeah. Not number 6, not 6. Sorry, 6 SIX, not the number 6. Sorry, that's confusing. Have a look at the Instagram, because I had a look at it a couple of weeks ago when Gregg and I spoke again after not talking for a bit, I think it was, or a few weeks back. And the selection is really good, because basically you look at the site, and I wasn't sure how it worked, but now I understand. So it's a curated selection. It's predominantly, it seems predominantly was 996s, 997s, Gregg, correct?
It is 9. Yeah. So the idea was, I just came up with FirstFlatSix because someone's first 911. Yep. Obviously, a first 911 could be at any dollar value, but the 996s and 997s are presenting excellent value wise. So it's had started with those, correct?
Yeah, and they're 996s, they're 997s, they're manuals. Some have got aero kits. There's turbos. There's a really nice white turbo one there I noticed on a post a couple of days ago. I guess in a way, it's similar to employing a person to find you a car, correct? It's almost like
that is exactly.
And I'm trying to think of the guy's name that was on Matt Farah, and I just can't think of his name for a second.
Oh, are you comparing me to the guy Sirio?
Yeah, Sirio, right? So let's talk about Sirio, because a lot of people listen to that. A lot of people listen to that episode. So this is the idea, right, Gregg? This is the idea. So
I'll take it as a compliment.
I mean, he has a bundle of clients and he finds cars for people, but it's almost like a similar sort of service and a similar sort of passion. And it is a passion there, because you can see you really love 911s. And, they're carefully selected. And basically, as you just said, people can then go to whoever's selling them and inquire about the car. But it's almost like you're picking them out for people who, and I know from doing this podcast and doing YouTube that I get messages all the time, people needing help. People need help. You know what I mean? People who are coming to the brand for the first time and not sure if they should get a 996 or should I get a 997, and what should I look for, and what did you do? And I get messages like that all the time. So I know that this Instagram like yours and your website would actually help a lot of people.
So it's exactly, you hit the nail on the head. It is essentially, I find, first of all, people get upset about this, but I only deal with manuals. I don't do PDK. I don't do Tiptronics. Excuse me. I try to find the quirky colors, cars that have a cool spec. Then essentially, Porsche, even now today, it's all about the spec.
Yeah.
The price ranges vary wildly based on color and options. So, I'll get people that make inquiries and like, oh, can I pay you for? And I've been able to monetize this now, Michael.
Oh,
so
you
it
have?
started. Yes,
Okay.
I have. So
I was going to ask you that.
Yes, it started with, just throwing them up for anyone to, purchase at their will on the website. And then people have reached out for just exactly as you described to help them buy, sell, or, consult what should I look for, et cetera, in buying a 911.
Okay.
So I've had people inquire and they say, oh, why can I pay you when I could just put a filter on, cars.com or Auto Trader? That's true. You can do that. But, those sites don't know about, rest of world suspension and sport exhaust and deviated stitching and limited slip differentials. You know what I mean? So those things take time to find. And the sellers, a lot of the times, aren't aware that those things are worth money or that they're special. So,
no, you're right. You're right. I mean, look at thinking about cars that people don't know that's special. In James, who I had on Owner Stories a couple of episodes back, or episode 8, I think it was, James from Melbourne, and he bought that cup car, and he bought it from a dealer in Melbourne, and they had no idea what they had in that cup car. They had
those are the best. When you can sense that, that's like you hit the jackpot.
And so you get a 996 cup car at a really good price, and it's quite a significant history of that car. The people that used to drive it and race it, and and then he sold it on to someone in the US, in Miami, actually.
Correct.
So that's what happened to that car.
It happens. Yep.
So let's go on to the next one. So we had the first one. You had that for 11 months, and then you thought, okay, I'm going to buy another one. And did that happen? That happened quite recently. The new car, right? So tell everyone what you bought next.
It took about a year and a half to find it. So the first one had a graphite interior, and for people that know me and follow me, I'm not a big fan of the graphite interiors. They just age terribly, and they show a lot of dirt and wear, and just not a big fan. And the car, one of the major criticisms of the 996 is the interior. I don't know if you guys in Australia, did you guys have the Ford Ranger pickup?
They have it there now, Ford Ranger.
Okay,
the newer
right.
ones. They have newer ones, yeah.
All right, so I'm talking the older ones, like from the mid-90s. It, had a very terrible interior, Ford Ranger type for anyone in the U.S. I wanted, that car had the base leather. I wanted a car with full leather. I also wanted a car with a really cool color, speed yellow, cobalt blue. One of a very, not silver, not black, essentially wanted to stay away from. It feels like 99% of these cars are some shade of silver or gray.
Yep.
So
what's wrong with silver, Greg? I've got a silver one, right?
No. I don't mean that in any disrespect. I know you're driving a silver 997, but if you think about it, in the 90s,
true.
The late 90s, the silver metallics were all the rage, which is probably why every single 911 seems like it's silver. I just wanted something different, Michael. That's all. I didn't mean no disrespect to anyone, to any Arctic Silver owners out there. So the timing probably could not have been worse. I saw the car listed for sale at a dealership in this next state over. So it's about a 4-hour drive.
Right.
This was late February. So this is right when COVID is ramping up. The stock market had just cratered, had the worst week ever. The car was listed. It had terrible pictures. It had aftermarket wheels, and it was at a dealership. It was at a Porsche franchise store. So those were like those were 3 strikes against me right off the bat. But the car was speed yellow, and I adore speed yellow. Fantastic color. It is a base non-metallic color that was not even an upcharge when these cars were new. And for some reason, no one spec'd them in this color, or at least they very rarely spec'd them in this color.
Yeah, they're not very popular, but it is one of those. It's such an iconic color in the 911, isn't it?
It is. You see, the roof yellow birds. These cars are, when they pop in yellow. I don't know. There's something about it, and not racing yellow, speed yellow.
Yeah. No, speed yellow is great. I'm looking at your Instagram now, actually, just looking at your car. So you found that car, yeah.
So I found the car, and then I was like, I kind of, COVID is running rampant, the uncertainty of what's going on. So I just called the dealer. I said, what do I don't have anything to lose but the phone call. So I called the dealer and asked him about the car. And before I could even ask, the salesman reached out to me. He was like, oh yes, we have this car. It's in the shop right now. We're redoing the IMS, RMS, and we're getting it ready for retail. So now I'm super excited because the price with the IMS, RMS done is now in the range of where it should be.
Right.
So then the gentleman proceeds to tell me, oh, I also have the stock wheels, and the car was optioned with it's called the Carrera spoiler. It's option code XAG.
I was going to ask you about that actually. So that is a factory spoiler, is it?
That is a factory
because
spoiler.
It looks like a slightly different shape to the normal Aero kit spoiler. Is it a different
Correct.
shape?
So this car is a 2002. 2002, they did not make the factory Aero kit available in the United States yet. That was 2003 and 2004. So this spoiler was a carryover from the 996 ones, I believe.
Right.
So the salesman reached out and said, "Oh, I have the stock wheels, I have the stock deck lid. So I do have the car also has I could revert it back, the stock automatic lid that comes up."
I'm looking at the picture on your story actually that you put up for me on the highlight. It's a nice shaped spoiler, isn't it? It's got a nice shape about it.
I was convinced when
it's not a GT3 spoiler, which is what I think is kind of nice about it. It's not the same shape, is it?
Correct. It's not as what's the word? It's not as big. It's not as out there as a GT3 spoiler, but it is it's called the Carrera spoiler, option code XAG. It is still available today. You can get it on the various Suncoast. I know offers it. It's super expensive. I would not advise anyone to pay what they're asking, but if you want to, it's still out there and you could still buy it.
Okay. New. Well, that's a good option actually if someone wants it because it does actually look really good. And
so,
like I said, I like how it's not trying to copy the GT3. It's a specific spoiler that's just, for the Carrera.
Correct. So the salesman reached out, said he had the stock wheels, the stock spoiler. They changed the IMS, RMS, and he had a folder of service records.
Oh, perfect.
With a Porsche certificate of authenticity, with all the books. I had 3 keys. The gentleman who owned the car, I have every record from new on this car from 2002 till the day he traded it in.
How many miles, Gregg, was it?
19,000.
Only 19,000 miles.
Only 19,000.
So was this priced? You don't have to let on to the price to the listeners. But was it priced at a premium because of the miles and because of the condition?
It was not. It
wasn't.
Fortunately for me, it was not. I think it was priced under market. But
so
these Porsche stores, all the stores anyway, they, a lot of times they take these cars in extremely cheap. So even though I paid what I would consider not market for it, I'm sure they made a ton of money on the car anyway.
Right. Because I was wondering if the dealer, some dealers, they're not really that clever sometimes, and they thought, yellow 911, I'm not going to be able to sell this that quickly, so I'll price it accordingly.
I find with the Porsche stores, they know Porsche, but they don't know the 996 and 997 isn't in that used car category. It's not a classic and it's not new. They got guys there that kind of don't know about them, and they are generally priced. Well, they were earlier this year under market, but now the market has gone ridiculous for these things, and now I think all of them are overpriced. But that's a conversation we could have later.
It's a great look. It's a really lovely looking 996, and the speed yellow. It really does make it. I kind of like how it does stand out because the 996 is always the silver, the black. Not so much white, because James, who was on the previous podcast, he had a white 98, and I thought the white looked really good in it too, even though you don't seem to sell.
Correct. The Carrara white, they call it, super rare on these 996s. You never see. And again, base color, no one bought. I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, everyone bought Guards red. Plenty of Guards red, I'm sure, but just
plenty of Guards red.
Not the speed
plenty
yellow.
Of silver, plenty of black. Yeah. So the car was 19,000 miles. It had a black full leather interior. It had 18-inch, the lightest wheels, the BBS Carrera 2s. The dealer had put fresh new Pirelli P0s on the car. Car has PASM. My favorite options are the yellow seatbelts, painted center console. Leather steering wheel is very nice.
I think, Greg, sorry to interrupt. I think that makes a huge, and I've said this before, I think it makes such a huge difference in the 996, and I think it's just due to the design of the interior, that when that center console is painted in body color, it just makes the car inside just look, to me, it makes it look so much better.
Looks great. Breaks
yeah.
up the sea of the, because
You don't want carbon.
Even it's just all black or all Savannah or all gray or natural. It's just. I agree with you. It looks fantastic. Has aluminum trim bits. It has crests in the headrest. What else? Heated seats. And then another controversial topic, which I know you spoke about, and I love, has a rear wiper.
It does. Yeah.
Yes.
Do you use it?
I have used it once.
I had this conversation the other day, didn't I? I actually do. I do use the wiper. I had this conversation with Barry, I think. I do use it, but I have to admit, if I spec'd one, if you were buying one new, I'd probably opt not to have it. I'd probably say no rear wiper.
I just like the look of it on there too. I don't know why. I can't explain
But then again, I do actually use it. You know what I mean? Like, I have actually used it, and it does work. So, in fact, it probably works better than my front wipers at the moment. All right. So what about the? Would you buy for your 996 for your Speed Yellow? Would you buy the new classic PCCM Plus system? Would you put that in there?
So me personally, I don't. The car is a weekend toy. All of my what I'll call weekend toys. I have small children. Putting car seats in the back of those is a very laborious chore.
Yep.
So if I do 1,000 miles on a third car, it is a lot. So for me, I don't see the value in putting I think they want like $3,000 US for that thing.
Yeah, they're expensive.
In the car. If I was daily driving the car, which some people do buy these to daily drive, I would probably do it. But since I don't, I'm okay with not having it. Right.
I think Porsche's they've been pretty smart with it though, because I see so many Instagram posts where people have added it to their 996.
Without a doubt.
Like, yes. Everyone seems to be doing it just to make the car feel more modern. But like you said, it has to pay off, and it is an expensive option to do. It is a very expensive option.
It is expensive. I put it like this. I think if you were to buy the car today, put the PCCM in tomorrow, and then try to sell it for $3,000 more what you paid with the PCCM, I don't think you get that value back.
No, I agree. So you've had the car since February, March? So
February, correct. February? I got it. They shipped it in March, correct. I took delivery the Friday before lockdowns.
So it sounds like it's pretty sorted. It sounds like you don't really have to do that much. Is there anything you'd like to do to it? Is there anything you'd like to add to it?
So they did. I think I'm not going to go through the list again, but they did do they replaced the battery, IMS, RMS, fresh tires, oil change. Obviously, when they did the IMS, excuse me. When I got it home, I did the brake fluid, the coolant. I did the remainder of the fluids. I did the filters, and I think that was it. I know 2 weeks after I got the car, the alternator went kaput. So I did have to replace that. And then as far as mods, since I've gotten the car, I have installed an Öhlins road and track suspension.
Oh, really?
I have H&R spacers in the front and rear. I added the OEM AeroKit 2 chin spoiler to the car.
So you spent some money on the suspension then. That's not a cheap purchase, that one. But it's a good purchase, right? It really will make a difference. It is a good
purchase. So a lot of people do ask about that. Why would you change the suspension on such a low mileage car? Okay. It's 19,000 miles, 20,000 miles. That's still, the rubber is still 20 years old on those things. I am a form over function person, but I do still like the look of lowered cars.
Mm-hmm.
So
I agree.
I think the 996 sits too high. I wanted it to go lower, but another thing that people struggle with, you should have just bought H&R Sport Springs, let's say. The labor to put in springs and coils is the same. So at that point, you're already going through the labor and you're going to pay for it. So to me, in my eyes, it's just better to buy a quality product to make the car drive as good, if not better. So I will never understand those folks that go out there and spend money to make a Porsche worse.
So how does it feel now? You've fitted these. You fitted them already, the Öhlins?
Yes, they've been. I got them in the early summer, June or July. I think it was July. The car.
And did it transform the feel of the car?
Listen, I'm not a race car driver, Michael. It feels great. I feel like I got my money's worth, and the car looks fantastic. And I know I put in a quality product. They weren't, some aftermarket, cheapo coilover that, is not going to make a 911 drive worse. So that was and I know it was a quality product. So when I go to resell, I'm not saying I'm going to get all the money back for it, but it's a quality product. People will know it's a quality product.
Yeah, no, you probably heard me talk about it. I've been thinking about doing that too when I get back to Australia to my car to change the suspension to that Bilstein one that everyone talks about on Renlist.
The PSS 10s, right?
Yeah, PSS 8s, I think. B12. It's called the B12 Pro Kit, which is
yes, I know what that is.
B12 Pro Kit. That's the one I was thinking about.
Correct. So I don't think that's an actual coilover, though. I think that's just a kit. It's a spring and kit and
yeah, correct.
Kit.
It's a sport. Yes, it's not coilover. No.
I'll be honest with you. I have never changed the ride height of mine. That's probably a way. I probably should have just gotten a combo spring and shock kit, but I don't know. Like I said, it was a nice car. I wanted to put in a nice product, so I just
yeah. No, I think it's a great decision. I think you made a good decision there. I like the 911 slightly lower. I mean, my 997 came with its on lowering springs, as I've mentioned before, and I think it looks better. I think it does look better. It could be fractionally higher, just a little bit higher because it does scrape here and there. But I mean, looks wise, it definitely gives the stance of the 911 a much better stance when you see it. That's for sure.
Yeah, the scraping is terrible. I did add I added an OEM lip, the front lip. So in my investigation, so the GT3 lip, $600 US. Shipped.
Can you add that to your? Hang on, sorry, Greg. What's the front spoiler you have on your car? Then you can add the GT3 lip.
So you can add the GT3 lip. So it looks good. I've seen a couple cars with it. You'll see if you go on my Instagram, I've seen it's on there too.
Right.
You'll see cars that do have it. So you can add it. I will just say that it's $600 US. I think is a lot of money for a piece of plastic on something that will likely get scratched or chipped or hit. They make the Gt3 Cup Lip, which is $200 shipped US. However, that lip is even bigger than the GT3 lip because it's for a cup car. So if you're worried about scraping the lip on your GT3 lip, it's gonna be ridiculous with a cup lip.
So how do they fit that? How do they fit that lip? Is it screwed in? Is it?
It is screwed in on the underside of the. If you look on my stories, it shows. I give you a shot. Yeah.
Yeah. Paul's garage.
So what I didn't know when I was researching this is, so in the US they made they call it the Aero Kit 2, which the car just looks like a GT3 body kit on a standard Carrera.
Yep.
I thought the slip spoilers were the same, however they are not. So that car came with a different part number. It was called the Aero Kit 2 lip spoiler. So it is slightly smaller than the standard GT3 lip.
Right.
But to me, that was a plus. I didn't have to really worry about scraping. And it was on the underside of $200 shipped US. So I figured that's the move to make. So I thought we had it installed. I think it makes a hell of a difference.
Yeah, it does. It does. It looks good. It looks good. I didn't notice it before when I was looking through it. It actually looks really good. So mods. Did we get onto the mods? We didn't get into the mods. So are you going to do anything else to the car, or that's it now? It's pretty much done.
I think I'm done. Like I said, I don't want to do anything to the car. I think people get a car and they go nuts with mods, to try to make it better. I don't think you're going to do better than the folks at Porsche.
No, I think you've got it. Looks pretty set up to me. It looks.
I don't. People put the air filter in.
It doesn't make a lot of difference, though, does it? The air filter. I haven't done mine. I know people.
No, it's like some people like the sound, but it robs power. Like that's all over the internet. There's dynos to show it. Doesn't increase power. So why do it? So honestly, Michael, I think I am done. What I may do is the side skirts, the Aero Kit 2 side skirts in the spring. They're still relatively affordable in my eyes. You can get them cheap, shipped under $1,000 US. That doesn't seem like a bad buy for me.
So it looks like the paint of your car is in really good condition too. It looks like it's in pretty immaculate condition.
It is original paint. I'll go back, and when I did have when I was looking to purchase the car, I did have the salesman do a walk around on FaceTime with a paint meter for me.
Oh, okay.
Paint meter, all the panels, because you're buying a Porsche with limited mileage, and you're buying it. I don't want to say I'm buying it as a collector car, but if I'm hoping that it goes up in value, you got to ensure that it's original paint and original body panels.
And it will go up in value, that's for sure.
Correct.
So that's what you're driving now. Are you still looking for other 911s? Are you still looking, or you're just going to hang on to this one for a while? You're not someone who wants to have two at one time, two 911s, like an air cooled and a water cooled, or
I would love it. I don't have garage space, and I don't know. I don't think my wife would be too happy about it either.
yeah, that's what
She wouldn't tell me. I don't think she would tell me no, but I know it probably wouldn't be great in my house for me for a little while if I did do that. So I'm gonna keep it. I mean, I'm a car guy. I'm already looking on to the next one per se. You know what I mean? So and I see what's out there, and if someone made me, I try to, not to different strokes for different folks, but I'm not one of those guys who likes to get attached to the car. There are people out there that love these cars like they're dogs or people. To me, it's a car. It should be driven. If someone makes me the right offer today, if I get off this podcast with you and someone made me, I'll sell the car today. It's a car.
And then get your next one to get the next one.
I'll get my next one. Correct. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm at with the car.
What other 911 do you like? What else would you buy? Is there an air cooled that you really like? Is there a modern 911 that you really like? What would what stands out for you?
I think the ship has sailed for me on air cooled cars. I don't really want to spend the money. And I think Steve said it best the other day on one of the podcasts. I don't know which one I was catching up this week. You drive them and they are very expensive, and then you get in them and sometimes they just feel like an underpowered older car. Do you understand what I'm saying? Not to disrespect the cars, but I don't think the value per, enjoyment or smile is there on the air cooled stuff for me.
Okay.
So if I'm looking to the next one, I'm looking in the future. I'm looking for something newer. I'm looking for something that I think is undervalued and could be collector in the future. Maybe a GTS 997 or 991, the last NA, Carrera, or I really like the Carrera T's and the 991-2s. That could be something I could be interested in the future, but something along those lines as looking for the next car that is hit the rock bottom as far as depreciation. You get in it and you drive it for free, and then you move on to the next one.
Yeah, that's the way to be. Are the Carrera T's, just a quick question, the Carrera T's in the US, are they still holding quite high prices? Are they still staying quite firm, or they come down a lot?
Those are still about $100,000 cars here.
Yeah, because they're kind of like, people didn't really get them, did they? Some people did, and then they sort of like, I don't know if they sold that.
The people that got them are people that think they're GT3s, and they price them. They think they're really, really special. I mean, a lot of people will say, "Oh, it's got the base Carrera engine in it with GT3 buckets. It's not a big deal." In a way, I say that. So I say I want a Carrera T, but there's at a certain point I wouldn't pay the delta that is out there between a base Carrera S and the T. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I like the Carrera T. I just think so many people spec them the wrong way. There's so many, and I look at them in the UK. They've got the sunroof and they've got the rear seats, and and they've got PDK. And I just think so many people spec it the right way. And I think if you spec it properly with the manual, with the non-tinted windows, so you still keep the lightweight glass, no rear seats, all of that sort of thing. The leather instead of the ebony trim. You could get the leather to replace that ebony trim, which is awful. I think you've got a really good car. If you keep it, if you're going to keep it for some time, you're not going to make money straight away, but I think it will.
No, that car is still. I mean, they're holding at between 90 and 100 here. I think they're still depreciating. I think they still will depreciate for a while. But like James said, the key is to get in on something rock bottom. You can drive it, enjoy it, and then when you're ready to move on, you know for a fact you won't have lost money. I'm not saying you're going to hit the lotto and outperform the S&P, but you'll get your money back. That's the goal.
Yeah, that's the goal. The goal is to experience as many as you possibly can and not be out of pocket too much, and just keep gradually building up. Correct? That's the trick, and that's not easy. But some people can do it, but it's not easy. But it's what we all sort of try to do. So in your where are we? There was something else I wanted to ask you about in the 996. So for a lot of people that listen to the podcast, Gregg, they're looking at their first 911. Do you think that they should get a 996, or you think they should spend that little bit more and get a 997? I know the prices are changing in some of the models, but 996s in general in a base Carrera manual is still less than a 997. Do you think they should spend the extra money and get the 997, or you think they should get a 996?
So the 996 is a lighter vehicle. It drives more like, people say the 996 is the it feels like an air-cooled car, but has the modern conveniences of a a later model car. So it has good air conditioning, and it feels like a more modern car. I would say if you absolutely cannot get over the interior, or if you're one of those headlight people, if those two things you cannot get over in a 996, then yeah, I would buy the 997. However, I would not buy a 997 for 20,000 more, and I'm just using an arbitrary number. I wouldn't pay a huge delta over the equivalent 996.
Right.
But I would, but the 996 is, especially if you spec it right and you get the right options on the car, is a fantastic 911.
Yeah, but I think people who are coming into the brand, I mean, there's nothing wrong with a Boxster. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. The Boxster,
nothing wrong with Boxsters or Caymans.
But I'm just saying, I still think if you can, I think push to get a 911 before you get a Boxster. I don't know why. I just think it's get into the 911, and if you can get a cheap 996, if you can get a cheap one and you get one at a good price still, even if it has got high mileage, as long as it's got a good service history, I think it's still something to consider, right? You shouldn't get put off by the mileage.
A lot. Yeah, I get this a lot. It's nothing against Boxsters and Caymans, but you didn't have a poster of a Boxster in your room. You didn't have a poster of a Cayman in your room. And I feel that a lot of folks will talk themselves into a Boxster or Cayman, and then I call it not a 911 syndrome, where after a few weeks you say, man, I really should have just bought a 911, or I should have got a 911, or this isn't a 911. And then you end up having to sell the car and go into a 911 anyway.
Yeah, and a Boxster makes sense when you've got a few cars and you've got if you like air cooled and you've got an air cooled, and you see people that have small collections, they have an air cooled and they have a water cooled, and they might have a Boxster as a track car, or a Boxster as just a fun car just to do drives on the weekend. People, it seems to get into people's collections, and I think that's because the value is still quite good. You can still pick up a Boxster S for, in Australia they're still really quite cheap. They're like 30,000 Aussie or something like that.
Oh yeah, they're great. They are great values, but a lot of people don't have room for just a two-seater, in their garage. You know what I mean? So,
but I think you hit it on the head. It's not a 911. Do you know what I mean? If you
correct.
think you're getting,
and I don't mean that in some snooty, disrespectful way.
No, it's still not a 911.
Correct.
And you'll eventually probably want a 911, so maybe you should just go straight to the 911, get a 996 that's a good price. What's the pick of the 996 variant? I think we touched on it before. I mean, my pick is I think the GT3 and the turbo. That's still my pick.
Okay, so GT, they're great cars, both of them fantastic. If money's no object, you're exactly right. But if we're going to factor in price-wise, I think that guys looking to get into their first 911, I'm thinking 996. So the big debate, I'm trying to be quick. I know we're going to run out of time here shortly. 996.1 versus 996.2. I've owned both. I prefer the .2. It did increase horsepower by, 20, what did we go from 300 to 315/320. So 20 horsepower, slightly heavier, but not very much, 100 pounds, I believe. The car feels faster to me. The interior with the full leather is nicer to me. If you're going to go with 9961, I think the perfect spec, or we'll call it the holy spec, would be a 9961 factory aero kit, factory sports seats, M30 sport suspension.
Yep.
Sport exhaust they didn't make in the 9961, but they did make in the 9962. So aero kit, M30, sport suspension, limited slip differential. That is the unicorn 996 in the United States.
Right. But you would go for the 0.2 over a 0.1.
I would go for the 0.2 just because I like it better. Now there's a price premium there, so you have to factor that in. But that is the what
but
I think
would. That's good advice though, because you've had a 0.1 and you've had a 0.2, so that's good advice. You know the difference. You felt the difference.
Correct. So there were two options that they made, P14 and P16.
Yes.
P14 Sports Pack included the M30 sports suspension and the sport seats. And then the P06 GT Pack was the aero kit, the sports suspension, and the stainless steel tips.
Okay. That's good to know. What about where you live? I always ask this question. I'm always interested to know just for other people who are visiting the areas or drives. Where do you take your 911 when you want to take it? When you want to get away from the kids for half an hour and you think I want to drive the 911, I want to drive the 996. Are there good roads around where you are there in New Jersey?
So it's very congested. The roads are horrible. They're pothole ridden.
They are.
With quarantine here, my kids have been with me like 99% of the time. So unfortunately,
so that's a bad question then.
No, it's a great question, actually. I'd love to get away, but then I have to leave my small children with my wife, and then she's like, "Oh, why do you get to go away for have fun for a little while on your own?" So,
okay, here's another question. In the US, where is the one place you want to take your 911 to drive? What is the drive you want to do in the US?
A lot of people talk Tail of the Dragon.
Is it as good as what everyone says? Because everyone raves
I don't
know.
That's just things I read on the internet and in various publications. That's I've done the Pacific Coast Highway from Monterey all the way to Los Angeles. That was a very cool drive. It was a long drive. It was a great drive. I did it in the very touristy Mustang convertible. I wish I had a 911 at the time, but
that would have been fun though in a Mustang.
Oh, it was fun. It had a good time. I know why everyone who drives convertibles wears hats now. I learned that the hard way on that trip. But yeah.
So your Insta, so Gregg's Insta, like I said, is FirstFlatSix. So if people want to reach out to you, someone's living in the US and they want help with their finding a 911, what should they do? Should they just reach out to you?
I would say DMs is getting very. It's probably as you probably know.
I can't keep up with them. Greg.
Yeah, you can't. I
lose track everywhere.
Correct. You lose track, and it's people think you're ignoring them, and it's not. You just miss it. You know what I mean? So I would say email mail@firstflatsix.com, and it's all spelled out FirstFlatSix.com is the easiest way. That's more manageable, and I can actually get back to people.
Yeah. So like I said, check out Gregg's Insta and have a look at what he puts together, what he curates for the 911s. Like I said, 996s and 997s. They look really, really good. And your 911 is, I like the speed yellow. I have to say I've been a fan of it. I mean, I know they come up in, the speed yellows always come up in GT3s, or they occasionally come up in GT3s in Australia. There was a couple that came up. And it always looks good in a GT3.
You'll see it occasionally in the GT3, the Turbo S's, the Turbos, C4S's and speed yellow in the United States are getting ridiculous money now. It's insane. I don't know.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. I don't know if did we talk about that when we were recording?
Yeah, we did early in the started,
I mean,
correct,
I just don't understand the 4S, and I know the 4S, that 996 4S, when it came out, it was a popular variant, and it was expensive. It was up there in prices. And I'm guessing it is the wide body. Correct? It is because it has the wide body.
Yeah, it's the wide body and the reflector in the back.
And the reflector in the back.
It has the greatest behind of any 911 that's been ever produced.
Yeah. And for the 996, I guess there is no Carrera S in the 996, so people think, well, I don't really want the base one. I'm going to go to this one. But I think, I still think, you would look for a turbo. Turbos, like I said, are more expensive in Australia and they're more expensive, I think, in the UK here. But I would jump to the Turbo primarily because it's got the Metzger engine. That's
Correct.
what I would do. I'd probably skip it, even though I'm a big fan of the 4S. I'm a big fan of the 4S when they were cheap, not now.
Correct. But then, also going with the Turbo or GT3, which are both Metzger based, you don't have to worry about the IMS issues. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Which are always looming back there. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the fear mongering about that is ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. I try not to think about it, but I am thinking about it more and more. So it is.
That you mentioned the other day with the post from Autohouse Hamilton. I looked at it, and that was. I mean, I tell people all the time.
Yeah.
Don't go looking for problems.
Yeah.
People all the time. Oh, what about bore scoring? What about IMS? Drive the car, enjoy the car. You do a bore scope, and you see something that's not great. Now you're done. The car's spoiled for you, and what are you going to do? You're going to you don't want to be those guys that pass on a bad car to somebody else. You know what I mean? That's not cool.
True. The problem with problem with that car is though it's not you obviously that person. I don't know the whole story about that picture in Autohouse Hamilton, but obviously the person did proper checks. They did certain checks, Greg. You know what I mean? And
correct.
No sound, no signs, and you have to trust Autohouse Hamilton when they put that post up. There were no signs of the car having it. And then you open it up and you see that. It's like, it's a concern. It is out there. I mean, it's not happening to everyone's car, but it is out there. Do you think the IMS issue is to do with low mileage cars more so than high mileage cars?
I think no, because if you've seen people, that's a common misconception. If you've read forums and you go to, the various auction sites here in US based and read the comments, you'll see cars that have had engines replaced at 80,000, 90,000, 100,000 miles. This stuff happens all the time. It's not a low mileage specific issue. It can happen anywhere, anytime.
So everyone that listens to the podcast, I always say I'm an enthusiast. I'm not an expert. All the times I've been saying high mileage cars are okay, they're not. Gregg's just confirmed it.
No, it's not. Listen, a lot of this stuff is Michael. A lot of this stuff is anecdotal, right? I'm not saying it's common. I don't have any. The only statistics you can go by is the lawsuit paperwork that Porsche did. I actually came with mine, with my car. I have paperwork for the lawsuit. And if you read it, I think Porsche stated something like less than 10% of the cars had issues, something like 8%. And the 99s, which had the dual row bearing, were even less than that. So it's a 1 in 10 chance. And I would say my position on this is you go spend $2,000-$3,000 US for peace of mind that your car will not explode.
Yeah.
It's a small insurance policy.
The IMS solution, though, the one I'm familiar with is LN Engineering. Does it actually have a shelf life? Does it actually has to be redone after X amount of kilometers or X amount of years, or is it?
Okay, great question, Michael. So if you go to LN's website, they do say it is a wear item, and it's 7 years, 75,000 miles. Now, caveat that with LN is in the business of producing IMS bearings.
True.
So think about where the recommendation is coming from. I'm heavily into 996s and 997s. I have never come across a car that has had an LN bearing fail.
Right.
And a lot of these cars had bearings put in 2010, 2011, 2012. So they are already 7. My first car, the LN was installed in 2012. So at the time it was knocking on that door, 6-7 years old.
Right. So they suggest but they're probably covering themselves in a way too. And like you said, it is their business.
Correct. It's their business. Be careful where just be mindful of it is all I'm saying.
Good advice. All right, Gregg, we're almost in an hour, and I like to keep these to an hour, or I think we're over an hour, but that's fine. What else would you like to tell the listeners before we go? Is there anything else?
No, I just like to thank you and GT Steve for having me on. I don't know, I picked up your podcast early quarantine. It was probably that first week of April, and I typed into Apple Podcasts, 996, and one of your earliest episodes, maybe like the first 3, you talked about the 996, and that's how I got, that's how I discovered you. And I don't know, I can't be the first one that told you this, but you have a radio voice, Michael. I can't explain it. I don't know what you do for a living, but if the right person hears this, I got to imagine there's narrations and voiceover work in your future.
Thanks, Gregg. Thank you. Yeah, no, it was good. It was good that you reached out. I remember I was in Bahrain. I think it was like way back in March or something. And I think there was one comment. I think it was one comment was about Steve's microphone. And I think the other one was about 996s. I remember.
Yeah, it was. I remember too. And not, you probably thought of,
That's why Steve's sound is so much better now. That's why his sound is so much better. I made him go out and buy a microphone. See.
That's good. Yeah.
All right, Gregg, that's great. Thanks for being on PorscheCooled Owner Stories. I want everyone though to go to Gregg's Instagram, FirstFlatSix, give him a follow, and the website as well, which you have blog posts and more information about the cars. Correct, Gregg?
Correct. You'll get the more information, and you'll actually have the link to where you can go purchase the car.
Yeah, but like I said, I looked through Gregg's Instagram, FirstFlatSix, and it's really well curated. They're all manuals. They're 996s, they're 997s, they're low mileage cars. Some have got interesting options. The first one, the one actually you posted I think a day ago, I thought it was a GT3, and it's just a Carrera with the aero kit. It actually looks quite good. The grey one, is it Atlas grey or seal grey? That grey one that was up there.
Atlas grey. Slate grey. It might have been slate grey. Slate grey. Yeah.
All right, that's great. Thanks so much, Gregg. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time out on the morning. I appreciate it, Michael. You keep chugging along. You're doing a great job. No, thank you so much, and thanks for all the support. All right, everyone, thanks for listening to the PorscheCooled Podcast. That was Gregg from the US. Gregg owns that Speed Yellow 996, and he's FirstFlatSix. That's about it for today. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.